It's a trend that started long before the Great Recession, and it shows no signs of abating. The number of publicly held companies has dropped sharply in the past 15 years, and the number of initial public offerings each year doesn't even begin to offset this decline. So what does this bode for investors, issuers, and even the economy? We have David Weild of Grant Thornton. He helped author a new study that takes a look at this particular situation. He joins us in the studio, and we have Democratic Senator Ted Kaufman of Delaware. He joins us from Capitol Hill. Senator, welcome to the program. And David, good to have you back. Thanks very much for coming in. David, just going to set the picture right now for what you describe as this dearth of initial public offerings and indeed really a decline in the number of publicly traded companies. What's the big problem?
Well, the big problem is that we're delisting public companies at a faster rate than we're listing new ones. So as a consequence, we've had the U.S. equity markets in secular decline since going back to 1991. I mean, we calculate that we should have, if everything had stayed constant, double the number of public companies that we actually have.
Let me just see if Senator Kaufman has a thought this. Yes. Senator Kaufman, I mean, this has been brought to your attention. Right. What is the likelihood that Congress is going to act on this?
Well, I think that Congress is going to have to do something. This is just part of a trend that's been going on Wall Street for quite a while. We had a period of, no regulation or very little regulation, and then these things build up like high-frequency trading, where it used to be 30% of the market, now it's 70%. And there's a lot of people feel that's crowding out these smaller investments, and I think that's what David's talking about. Plus the number of dark pools, we've gone from 2 market centers to 7. So what we've asked is the Securities Exchange Commission to take a look at the whole market structure to see what is actually going on here. Because whenever you have this much change and an opaqueness, not transparency, and a lot of money, in the past that has led to some pretty bad things.
David, the senator talks about opaqueness. What about the advent of technology? Is that also causing a problem?
Well, I think it is. There's been a computer arms race, if you will, on Wall Street, and stakes have gotten awfully high, and I don't think that the SEC has had the investment necessary to keep up. And so I would argue, with my knowledge of, I was vice chairman of Nasdaq, that the SEC is frankly outgunned. And so to the senator's point, I think that we really do need to have a soup-to-nuts review. They need to appropriate adequate funds, and we need to get back to the business, at least, of the SEC being able to know real-time what's going on in the markets.
Senator Kaufman, not to put too fine a line on it, though, I mean, you've got a Democrat in the White House, you've got a Democrat majority in the House and in the Senate. Can't you appropriate more money if it's a money issue for the SEC?
Oh yeah, I think part of it is the money, but you just have basically there's been major investment made in these high-frequency trading. So what's going on in the exchanges is in market centers, a lot of trading. And there isn't much room for the IPOs that David talks about in his study getting a chance to get actually onto the market. So part of the problem is that. We'll be working on the resources for the SEC, but this is going to be very difficult. I mean, when you look at where the major firms are, like Goldman Sachs and JP Morgan and others, more and more of their profits are coming from trading, and less it's coming from investing in stocks. So, and getting more investment information out there and encouraging people to invest in stocks. So it's a big systemic change that's going on, and we haven't been watching what's been going on because basically for a while we had a theory we should have no regulation.
David, the senator talks about this idea of change that has been going on. Is it possible that what we're seeing now is the result of changes that have been made over the last, let's say, 5 or 10 years? I mean, for example, there are no longer any real middlemen in the business right now, and that was sold, for example, decimalization, that was sold as being beneficial. But are we seeing that maybe there's a reaction in the marketplace? Because Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, they're going to go where the profits are anyway.
I think everybody will, and I think it's really up to Congress to put the profits back where it actually does something beneficial to the U.S. economy. I think that's a little bit of what we're talking about. But, you go back to 1997, which is when the listings problem really started to accelerate, and that was the first regulation that actually stripped profitability out of it. It's called the order handling rules, and you start fast forward. It wasn't until 1991 that decimalization came into effect. The thing that absolutely shocks us is that we had an enormous number of delistings up until 2002, and that's when Sarbanes-Oxley went in. So Sarbanes-Oxley is a red herring in the sense that, yeah, maybe it did increase costs, but we already were in deep trouble from a series of regulatory changes that went on dating back to 1997.
Senator Kaufman, do you agree? I mean, is there a situation where we're kind of blaming certain regulations for consequences that they really had no connection with?
Well, I think there's some of that goes on, but I think just frankly, there hasn't been regulation. There hasn't been much looking into regulation for a while now. And that's really what I think we're doing. The Securities Exchange Commission said they're going to do it. They're going to look into market structure. I sent a letter to them, laid out the dark pools and high-frequency trading, plus the things that David's talking about. But we've got to be more urgent about it. This is very serious. What David has identified here, we can't get out of this economy and get back on our feet if our small companies can't get IPOs and cannot get money that they need to be in order to develop the new products. So this is a very, very serious situation for us to be at a time when we're going to need everything we can to come out of this problem we have, the economic problem we have, and then once we're out, build the new companies we need to give us the business and the jobs for America for the next 10 or 15, 20 years.
Senator Kaufman, can you give us some time frame? What should we expect from the Congress and when?
Well, I think we're starting on regulatory reform now in the Senate, so there should be something there. But frankly, it's up to the Securities Exchange Commission. They're independent. They're a regulatory agency. We have oversight responsibility in the Senate. So what we're doing is talking to them about moving this up to the top of the list. And they have said they're going to look into it. The question I have is just about the urgency of it. And I think David's study is one more reason why we have to do this much, much, much quicker than I think is their normal way of doing business.
Senator Kaufman, we'll have more, but I just want to get your thoughts on Senator Dodd's regulatory reform. Do you think that he's recognizing this as a problem that is as great as you see?
Yes, I hope so. We've talked about it. We had a hearing last week in the week before last in the Banking Committee, Securities Committee, to talk about these issues. So he's aware of them, and I think that'll be included. But then there'll be amendments on the floor. As you know, this is not a fast process. Our founding fathers did not give us a fast process.